Walking the Land in Silence by Sonia Berry, Department of Education, University of Tacoma. Keelam Ekum Na, the day is good. I'm Sonia Berry, and my father is Michael Lestenkoff Jr. from St. Paul, Alaska, and my mother is Janet Pesterkoff from Uzinki, and we are known as Aleut, but we call ourselves Unangang. We are proud of it. I'm joining you today from the usual and accustomed lands of the Suquamish people. Our relationship with the land as Indigenous peoples is a manifestation of settler colonialism. Part of our resurgence is to reclaim and restore settler colonial names and narratives and domination over what reality is and discover or rediscover our sacred truths, which restore us to land and thus our well-being. This implies our belief in the 7 generations of what our ancestors understood and what we can reclaim for the next generation. We can legitimize ourselves through our relationships with the land and act as every day as consciously calling a place by its proper ancestral name is profound. Illahee is Chinook jargon for land and earth, and yet the traditional peoples from this area referred to this village, Illahee, as a resting place after the fire in the 1730s. This everyday act of resurgence not only counters the erasure of names, histories, and genealogies, it further asserts our responsibilities as the descendants of this place to care for and protect the long-term well-being of that which sustains us physically and spiritually as people. Erickson shared in Walking with Decolonial Intention on Indigenous Land that walking has become an intentional act of decolonization and resurgence. We began to deconstruct colonial oppression by starting with this settler self in relation to Indigenous lands. And one way to do this is to heal ourselves through nature and what it teaches us. For example, this is a story, Learning from Licorice, that was gifted to me by Lower Elwha Clallam storyteller Roger Fernandez. A long time ago, the people had small voices. They could barely hear each other when they talked. When the people spoke to each other, they couldn't hear one another. Their voices were so quiet and so small that they couldn't always understand each other. One day, a woman from the village was walking through the woods, and as she was walking, she heard a voice that said, "Come here." And the woman asked, "Who is that?" "Over here," the voice said. And the woman went towards the voice, and there before her was Licorice Fern. Licorice Fern said, "Chop my roots and taste them." So the woman did as Licorice Fern instructed, and she chopped up Licorice Fern's roots and tasted them and said, "Oh, that tastes really good." The woman now had a big voice. She returned back to the village and said, "Hello!" Everyone in the village was amazed and asked where she got this big voice. And the woman told the people about the licorice fern and instructed that everyone go to the forest. So the people all went to the forest, and they gathered licorice fern, chopped up the roots, and tasted them. And that is how the people got big voices. And that is all. So licorice fern teaches us the power of clear communication. And when we find our own voice and develop skills in effectively communicating, we can move towards achieving our goals and building healthy relationships. And this also relates us to what we can learn from cedar, which is kindness and generosity. This is another story from Lower Elwha Clallam storyteller Roger Fernandez. A long time ago, there was a tall and strong grandma cedar tree One day, a little tree who was her grandson began to grow next to her, and she happily watched him grow and grow, and she was able to protect him from the wind and the hot summer sun and the hungry deer. And when he was lonely, she called the birds to his branches to keep him company. So he grew healthy and strong until he was as big as his grandma. Grandma was getting very old, and she needed protection and care, and grandson Cedar was able to protect grandmother from the strong wind and hot sun and the hungry deer. He was able to call the birds to her branches, and then she missed her old tree friends. And one day she said, "Grandson, don't worry about me. I am old now. Take care of yourself. Do not worry about me anymore." But he said, "Grandma, when I was little, you protected me from the strong wind and the summer's hot sun and the hungry deer. And when I was lonely, you called the birds to me so would have company. And Grandma, you did all those things for me, and now I will do them for you." And so grandson Cedar Tree took care of his beloved grandmother tree. In thinking about how we are kind and care to each other, we could ask ourselves, what does it look like and feel like to be gentle and kind like the cedar? And how could I receive generosity and kindness with an open heart and practice generosity in my life right now? In the Illahee forest was right on side of it was the Rolling Hills Golf Course. Part of deconstructing colonial oppression means recognizing contemporary markers of settler colonialism. This is partly evident through the state regulation and exploitation of land, ideologies, and entitlement, and the Western normalization in our everyday lives. It's as if I can pull up invasive plant species under the guidance of indigenous teachings, and in doing so, I can pull out some of the colonial roots of Western culture that are also embedded in me. These pictures are from the rain gardens that were in the parking lot. And a rain garden is a sunken out or depressed area in the landscape that collects rainwater from the runoffs and allows it to soak back into the ground. Rain gardens also help filter out pollutants and runoff and provide food and shelter for our more than human relations. And then the more complex rain gardens with drainage systems are known as bioretention and help. And so it all begins with seemingly everyday actions. This is a call to action to gather our families, clear a space, make a garden, and gift it a name and commit to it. A garden represents growth, and the seed that was planted within me today when I walked in Illahee Preserve. It is our everyday actions to ensure that these roots will always be here, that we renew our relationships and responsibilities to the source from which our well-being and peoples sprung. I was told that the land is our grandmother and she loves you. Let our walk together be filled with struggle, hard work, resurgence, and healing, and let it be overflowing with deep embodied love. I painted this, a resting place based upon my walking the land in silence in Illahee Preserve. And I was talking to Suquamish elder and storyteller Barbara Lawrence, and she told me about the lullaby that had Illahee in it and Anatai. And it was about a mother who was canoeing from the village of Illahee to Anatai, and a storm came, and she sang her baby a lullaby to soothe her and grow. And this to me was a metaphor of connecting with our mother wounds from displacement from our traditional ways, and how when we connect to the land, we connect to ourselves. And as I said, the land is your grandmother and she loves you. And that is all.